Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another YouTube video. Today I wanted to do another top 10 style video. I've done one of these before in the past, but I wanted to do another one for Final Stand, mainly because one, I got back into the game recently with a couple friends, just messing around, and two, it's been a while since I've made a video on Roblox, so I decided that it would be a good idea, and yeah, let's get right into it. So today's video is going to feature the top 7 best races in the game. If you know, since a lot of people really don't know who is statistically the strongest race and which ones are the weakest out of all of them. There's 7 races to pick from: Jiren, Frieza, Saiyan, Namekian, Majin, Human, and Android. I'm going to go through all of these races from worst to best. Coming in at number 7 is gonna have to be Majin's. This is my favorite race out of all the characters in the game. I play them the most. They are, to me, the most interesting, and they are also the most difficult to play. A lot of new players will see this race and think, wow, that's kind of cool, you can have a different kind of colored skin color, you know, and they're like, oh, Majin Buu from the show is pretty strong, so I think I'm gonna pick this character. Well, that's one of the biggest mistakes I see most new players do, is pick this race and not know how difficult it is to play and how anal it is to build, since you need to play a very specific kind of build or be a certain kind of player to make this race work. Now, this race has a multitude of forms, none of them really being the greatest apart from unstable, but we're going to get into that here. You have power boost, then you get full regen, then you get purification here, true anger, metal Majin, dark Majin, and unstable, in order like that. Unstable, or dark Majin, is a prestige 1 transformation that you can only get when you prestige 1 time through doing a tournament of power. And unstable is a transformation that you can only get at prestige 2 from doing a tournament of power twice and prestiging both times. Now, the strengths to this race: none. There are no strengths to this race, since there are races that are 10 times better than this race. There's almost no reason to play it outside of you want to make the game difficult for yourself, and that's pretty much it. Cons: everything about this race. There's no reason to pick them. Do not. Unless you are a really good PvPer, it's almost impossible to make them work and make them work properly. They're only good when they have unstable, and that is it. Unstable is considerably one of the best transformations in the game, since it has TP punches, as demonstrated right here. You can teleport and lock onto the enemies that you are fighting, making it much easier to fight things and players. And unless you are a PvPer, you should not pick this race. This race can be one of the best races in the game for PvP because of the TP punches on command whenever you need them. Since all you have to do is transform into this transformation, you don't need to get to low HP, because it is not considered UI like it used to be. This race is also incredibly difficult to play in terms of grinding due to their low stat categories in all their transformations, and due to the fact that they have low keymax in the transformations. This transformation you see here only gives a 4.3 times keymax from what I remember, which is the lowest out of any Prestige 2 form in the entire game. It also has the highest key drain out of every transformation in the entire game, since it does take more ki to run around, if you didn't know that, because when you vanish it does take up ki, and when you press Q and vanish it also takes up ki as well, because it counts as a snap vanish. And it is much more difficult to conserve ki on these characters, which will most likely lead to you wasting stats into key max. This character's build that I have here is a melee health hybrid and a little bit of key max. This character is decent for what it is. If you want to do that kind of build, you can, but I recommend you do a health max and key max build in all your prestiges and when you rebirth. I don't recommend doing pure damage builds on these characters unless you are skilled at this game or feel like you think that you can get some use out of unstable. I'd be very wary about picking this race, and honestly, overall, I would just avoid them.
This will be my greatest, most powerful Kamehameha!
Now at number 6, we have humans. Humans are widely considered to be the worst race, but that is simply mistaken, since as previously mentioned, Majins are definitely the worst in a lot of ways. But humans come in at number 6. This race, its pros are, well, kind of nothing. They excel at Prestige 1, and that's pretty much it. They lack in damage and transformations, but apart from that, all around, they're okay. Compared to Jiren's or Saiyans, there's really no reason to pick them. I play through I'm playing a human here. I like picking the worst races in the game. They're my favorites. Overall, they're okay. They get simple forms, nothing too crazy or special. They get Kaioken times 1, Kaioken times 4, which is in the shop here still. They also get Kaioken times 20, Mystic Kaioken times 10, and then they get God Human. Now these forms overall are okay. They boast decent stats overall, and really aren't too bad to start out with. Kaioken times 20 does give you the same damage numbers as Super Saiyan 3, so since the human's base form is stronger than Saiyan's for 2 for 1, so you get 1 stat every 2 levels instead of Saiyan's 1 stat every 3 levels, you can make some pretty good use out of this form. It'll help you, it'll actually carry you through space pretty easily. It can help you with Namek really well if you are good at dodging damage or use Flash Strike or Flash Skewer. Overall, it's pretty good in the early game, and this race is nothing to trifle with since for PvP it's not half bad. Now where it struggles is again also its key max, making it really not desirable for newer players or anyone who's experienced in this game, since again there are better characters and playable races. Overall, they're also incredibly boring. They're not very fun to play or pick, like at all. Like, oh my god, they get Kaioken, whatever. God Human is lame looking, not as interesting. Now, in Prestige 1, they get Kaioken times 100. A lot of people consider this transformation to be the worst transformation in the game, due to the fact that it has incredibly high health drain, but boasts high stats. I consider this to be one of the better forms in the game, and can actually be utilized quite well. Now, in PvP that is, this Kaioken times 100 can heal the player for 50% of their HP and gives them back 30% of their key max. This is nothing to scoff at, as Zenkais can easily help you in a fight and give you the upper hand like nothing. And if you're good at burst damage, you can actually use Kaioken like Goku would in the show, in burst, and then leaving the transformation and swapping over to a different transformation. It's no joke, this form can really hurt since it boasts a 500 stat category. That is the most out of every single race in the game, apart from 2 races. But overall, humans are okay at best and really bad at worst. I don't recommend picking them over these next races, but they definitely can be good if you don't really care about the race you pick, or you think Mystic just looks cool, or you like the idea of using Kaioken. But this race takes a little bit of strategy to play, but this one has a little bit more leniency with the builds you can pick, since you can pick, damage builds and not suffer high key drain or low key max, since their god forms are pretty good. Mystic Kaioken boasts some decently high key max, and so does God Human and Dark Human.
You fool!
Coming in at number 5, we have Saiyans. This is the most popular race in the game, since a lot of people pick them and enjoy them, due to the fact that the 2 main characters of Dragon Ball are both Saiyans. I understand that. If you want to play this race, I'm not going to judge you for it. It's whatever. But this race does have a lot of flaws, and honestly this one can also be considered the worst race in the game, because another certain race exists that does the same thing but has a better base stat category. Saiyans have a 3 for 1 base stat category, meaning they get 1 level in their base stats every 3 level. They struggle quite a bit in the early game, since Super Saiyan really isn't enough to get them through most things. Super Saiyan 3 is okay, but Boost has a very, very, very high key drain, and they struggle a lot in these transformations. This doesn't really allow them to do much, since they're going to be charging more than they're actually going to be attacking, since most players are going to end up doing damage builds, and that's fine. You can do a damage build on these characters and not need to worry about it, since in the end game they actually are pretty good. Boosting some of the highest point transformations in the entire game, like Kaioken Blue, with a 700 stat category. It's not too bad overall to pick this race, and you really won't struggle all that much once you reach the end game. You might have some trouble doing TOPs or doing Broly, but apart from that, this race is pretty good overall. They have a multitude of forms, which is what makes them so attractive to newer players, since there's a lot to mess around with. You have Super Saiyan, Ascended Saiyan, Super Saiyan Full Power, Super Saiyan 2, Super Saiyan 3, Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan Blue, Kaioken times 10, Super Saiyan Blue, Super Saiyan Rose for the Prestige 1 form, Complete Super Saiyan Blue for the Prestige 2 forms, and for Prestige 3, you also get Super Saiyan 4. You also get Legendary Super Saiyan in Prestige 1. Now, this race's cons are low base stats, and that's basically it. Their low base stats can be pretty tough to deal with, especially in PvP, because if you run out of ki, you're in quite a bad spot. You won't be able to kill players that are, you know, a normal different race too easily due to their higher stats in base form, so it's better to conserve your ki. Kaioken times 10 Blue has insanely high ki max, actually it has the highest ki max out of any transformation in the entire game, boasting a 10 times ki max, and it's incredibly difficult to run out of ki with this transformation on. I recommend that you just don't pick them. There are better options overall, and honestly, they're not too good. I don't really see what the attraction is, since honestly the auras don't look that cool, and I think Super Saiyan Blue looks lame as hell, but that's just a personal preference. Saiyans also used to be the strongest race in the entire game until the inclusion of a different race that I have the hatred for, but overall are not too bad.
But how did you...
Since I know about your proclivity for and over-reliance on instant transmission, there's really nothing to it. As I previously stated, there's nothing to it!
Coming in at number 4, we have Friezas, or Arcosians, if you're a nerd. Friezas boost decently good base stats and pretty high transformation stats. Not many people play them. They're quite rare to see, similar to Majins, due to the fact that they aren't really too attractable since other races exist and Saiyans are far more popular than Friezas. Friezas are pretty good overall, boasting a good base form for 2-for-1, which is better than Saiyans, and decent transformations, and really good ki max. In their transformations, they can be quite deadly, and most players can see that. They have good ki damage, good ki max overall, better stats in their transformations compared to other races, and are no joke. A good player can easily make them work, have an easy time doing content within the game, and doing Brolys and TOPs by themselves. This is definitely a good pick for a starter race, but you are kind of locked into doing one kind of build, locked into doing ki only, due to the fact that their transformations boost ki damage over melee damage. This is very apparent in a lot of their transformations. This isn't so much of a big deal in the lower levels, but in the higher levels it is not very smart to do a melee damage build on them, since their transformations only at max boost melee damage by 250, but overall aren't too bad of a pick. Their forms include Second Form, which is the first form for them. I know this is going to be very strange. Third Form, Final Form, Golden Form, Perfect Golden Form, Fifth Form in their Prestige 1, and Golden Cooler in Prestige 2. This race, once you get Golden Cooler, is considerably pretty damn good overall, and they're not bad. So I recommend playing them if you're looking for a race that isn't blatantly overpowered, and just overall pretty damn good. But this one can be switched out maybe for a higher spot, but I don't see it due to Golden Cooler having high ki drain. And that just is a push off for me personally, since the Prestige 2 forms really just kind of are the most important forms for a race. And not having that, they struggle a lot. But hey, Golden Cooler is a pretty badass transformation, and overall, they're a good race. So, yeah.
No, sir. No.
Moving on to the top 3, we have Namekians. Namekians back in the day used to be one of the strongest races in the entire game in terms of PvP, but were beaten out shortly after another inclusion into the game. This race is no joke, overall is insanely good and an amazing pick for starters. Their transformations have both high stats and insanely good ki max, and they have a 2-for-1 base stat. Their cons really don't have any, they are just good all around. The only con I can think of is that their transformations have lower stats compared to other races, so they can struggle a little bit more in PvE content. This doesn't matter as much in PvP, but they're pretty good. I recommend picking them. Their transformations include Potential Unleash, Ultimate Namekian, God Namekian, Awakened Namekian. In Prestige 1, they get Demon Namekian, and in Prestige 2, they get White Namekian. This race also has the ability to regenerate. This can be incredibly useful because it only cools down every 2 minutes, which is pretty fast, and it heals them for about 30% of their HP. This can be transferred out for their first transformation if the player so decides to use it, so you won't have to worry about missing out on a transformation at the start of the game. Now, most players will use that ability religiously since their first transformation really is not all that good. But the first transformation out of any other transformation in the game boasts some of the highest keymax at a 2.5 times keymax. Ultimate Namekian boasts a 5 times keymax. God Namekian also boasts a 5 times keymax. Awakened Namekian has a 6 times. Demon Namekian has a 6 times. White Namekian also has a 6 times, which is comparable to Golden Cooler, but has much higher key drain than Golden Cooler, but their stats are flat. White Namekian has a 480 stat input into all stats, unlike Golden Coolers, which does not. So this means that you have more leniency on builds, and overall have a better and more useful character than Coolers, so you aren't really locked in. So if you want to do a melee build, you can. If you want to do a tank build, you can, and you're not forced to use key. But overall, it's a good pick for a race, and I honestly, this is one of the better starter races in the entire game. It's coming in at number 3. Coming in at number 2, guys, we have androids. Androids as a race is no joke. These guys are insanely overpowered, especially at higher levels and when they rebirth. They're no joke, boasting a 1-for-1 stat category for their base, but also boasting only one transformation that only gives them 5 stats. This race, among many, is considered the best race in the entire game due to the fact that at higher levels that they become incredibly strong. You're able to do actually any build on them and it would be viable, and they're overall pretty scary. They're the best in terms of PvE, but in PvP they struggle quite a bit due to the fact that they have incredibly low keymax. It is highly recommended that you rebirth with them, and do not prestige if you plan on grinding Broly's or doing any other PvE content like TOPs, since the game will get more difficult when you prestige, and to make up for it, the game gives you a prestige transformation to make the game easier. But since androids don't get that luxury, it's recommended that you stay non-prestige. Rebirthing with them is pretty cool overall, since you get a free 300 stats into your base form, and you still get to keep 10% of the stats you got when you were in heaven. It is recommended that you do not stay in heaven with them, since they get a 1-for-1 in their base stats anyways, and it is highly recommended that you rebirth with them instead. They're also the only race in the game to be able to receive Stat Boost, which is a secret 300 stats that they'll get randomly once they reach a high enough level. This means Stat Boosts are another rebirth that can happen on a character without them actually going to heaven, meaning that instead of just getting 300, they can get 600 free stats. This makes them incredibly overpowered and nothing to be laughed at. If you plan on doing PvE content, pick them. They're incredibly good. Their forms include Direct Current, and they also have the ability to absorb energy. Energy absorption is an incredibly useful tool against key users, since you can steal key and turn it back into energy, aka key max, and it can also heal you. So they're a direct counter to key users, but they struggle when fighting melee users. A smart player will know to use their energy absorption to block moves, since it can actually block. It's interesting, but also really good, because you can also charge when someone is using a move on you. You can actually use it to block their next move that's coming around the corner. So if you are a good enough PvPer, you can make androids work, but it's highly recommended that you just stick to doing PvE content. Coming in at number 1 is Jiren's. This one you should have seen from the start. I talked about a race that was included later into the game quite a bit, and this one makes every other race obsolete besides androids. They boast a 2-for-1 stat category. They have no cons. They are the best race in the game, hands down. At Prestige 1, they get a 2-for-1 stat category, and they get the best transformation at Prestige 0 in the game. Form is called Hate. It boasts 450 stats in all categories, apart from Key Resistance, which is only 200. At Prestige 3, they get Despair. This transformation is incredibly overpowered due to the fact that their base form is a 2-for-1, unlike Saiyan's 3-for-1. This one boasts 700 in all stat categories except for Key Resistance. This overall can be... This is just absurdity. It makes every other race in the game obsolete and not worth playing compared to Jiren's. It multiplies key max by 5.3 times and has a moderate key drain, which means that it drains 5 key every 2 seconds. Jiren's overall should not have been added at all. They are very overpowered, and I think that they make all the other races too obsolete, which is the reason why so many of them are so low. And this also means that Saiyans are completely not worth playing. I don't see a reason in picking Saiyans over Jiren's, since Saiyans are just worse versions of Jiren's, and they both have the same Prestige 3 forms in terms of stats, and Jiren's have more stats overall. A level 700 Jiren that's Prestige 3 Rebirth will still be stronger than a level 700 Prestige 3 Saiyan that is also Rebirth by quite a bit. Their stats are no joke. They can do PvE content like no joke. They can do PvP content like no joke, and they are incredibly overpowered. You don't even need to prestige with them to make them good if you really wanted to just decide to do PvE content, if you wanted to do Broly's or Tops, but it is recommended that you Prestige 3 so you can get Despair. They're also incredibly good for PvP, boasting incredibly high stats, meaning that most players are just a joke to them. It's the best race for new players to pick, since they're so easy to build and easy to play. Most players will see the fact that they have lower key resistance in their transformations and decide for some fucking reason to put in key resistances. Yeah, don't do that. Don't waste stats on putting in onto key resistance. It's a waste. You will not get very far if you decide to do that. You save the 300 stats and put them into melee or some shit. I don't know. Health max, key max. Jiren's also make the game a cakewalk. So guys, I hope you liked this video, and if you guys didn't like the list, I kind of understand, since a lot of places are going to be very debatable for some players, especially with Friezas or Saiyans, because I know a lot of people love those characters, but stats are stats, and the truth is the truth. The only ones I can really see that are interchangeable are Friezas and Namekian, since they are very similar in terms of stats and key max, but since Namekians have an easier way to build a character than Friezas do, you can also do melee builds on Namekians. Really no reason to pick them. Jirens are overpowered, and that's just how it is. To the average player, Jirens are better than androids. I know that there are a bunch of level 2000 androids out there. If you're a level 2k android, get the fuck off the game and go outside. I mean, like, dude, you have no life. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you, dude? Jesus Christ. So if you the average player is just gonna hit level like 400 and just stop playing. So if you're gonna do that, you might as well just pick Jiren's. But hey, I'm the guy that picks all the worst races on purpose, so pick whoever you want. But I hope this helped you out if you're new. If you're not new and you think that my takes suck, please argue with me down in the comment section. I always appreciate it. And as always, guys, if you hated this video, make sure you dislike it and call me something mean in the comment section. I love all criticism. I appreciate it. It's the only way to grow. And have a good day.